Om Namah Shivaya. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavabhai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishabhai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Interesting about the pronunciation of Shanti Shanti. I'm not quite sure why, but there is a difference between the pronunciation of Shanti after most of the mantras, except for Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate. So you might have noticed it, I don't know if you did or not, but there is actually a different swara for Shanti after that mantra. Why it is the case, please ask this to Swamiji. Don't ask me, but I'll just tell you.
I think it's all Anudat. If I recall it right, that comes from Vedas versus the rest of the Shanti mantras that we normally say.
I didn't follow what you said.
So, so the Purnapada, I think, comes out, don't quote me, but it comes from a different Veda, Veda, and the rest of the Shanti mantras are from Yajurveda.
Okay.
So
I'll repeat that.
Reason,
I'll repeat that.
Sure.
It's very, that's a plausible. So Purnamadav is from a different Vedas. So anyway, the difference is, what the reason we can discuss that. But what it is that if you notice that if you do that after the Sahana Vavatu, then it becomes Shantihi. So it's high in the beginning and ending is low. Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi. Or you can say Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So you can either use Visarga or a Shakara. So that doesn't matter. But anyway, it's high in the beginning. When you do after Purnamadav, it becomes Shanti, Shanti. So it's low to high, or low to normal, and not high to normal. So it becomes Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Anyway, that's just a trivia.
The whole Purnamada shloka, the entire shloka is all Anudat, the lower tone.
Yes, it is.
From everything, the entire shloka is all, if you look at the lines in the shloka, the line is
It's all Anudatta, yes.
including Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Yeah.
That's what Shuddhatmani told. Why I didn't like it.
Yeah, but Anudatta pronunciation, Shiksha is different between Vedas. So even though the Sanya may be same, the Uchcharan becomes different.
Yeah. Okay. Write down one of you as this question, but Swami Vidhi. I'll also get educated by that. So we are looking at this mantra, which is number 2 or 3, depending on which treatment, which Swamiji's treatment. It doesn't matter. It's really pretty much the same. Yate Rudra Shiva Tanuhu Aghora Apapakashini Tayanas Tanuva Shantamaya Girishanta Abhichakashihi. So we were looking at invoking that form of Rudra, which is Dayamata, not Niyamamata. Niyamakarika is one which is according to the normal karma phaladata. But Dayamata means one which invokes something beyond that. I need a pardon from him, like a person who approaches the president, like this person who killed the uncle who was so immoral that he raped this young girl over and over again. And once he found that out, I cannot believe it. He shot him. But I think one can say that each one of us could be in that situation. And it was a very justified homicide in that sense. So if there is a person who take some daya on this person. Because now, he's already killed it and so on and so forth, killed him. But why spoil his life? Because it was done for a good reason. So the question is, when we invoke the daya form of Rudra, what do I need to do to deserve it? See, that's the next question. All we have done is that the possibility of daya as opposed to a niyama is there. That's kind of nice to know, because otherwise it is just karma phala. This is a very important point actually, because this is what distinguishes, amongst other things, this is what distinguishes the karma kanda from the jnana kanda. So in the karmakandis means the ones whose karmatha, who believe in pure Vedic karmas, yajna and so on, they believe we don't need Ishvara. Because, you talk about the Vishnu going to sleep after computerizing the whole universe, they say that's correct. Because we don't need Ishvara, he's already gone to sleep, so to speak. Now let it all run by itself, and all you need to do is to do the right karmas, and you will get the right phala. So it's Nyayakarita, it's their belief. Okay? So Swami Maheswaranji in one of the other books, not this one, I think he was talking about in some other book, one very beautiful, his books are, he has about 50, 60 books, and I've read them all. And one of the books which is just so beautiful is his 3-volume on Panchadashi, on the last 5 chapters of Ananda. I think I'm thinking that if I have to make a decision about if I do come next year, and I've already talked that maybe we should do the second part of the ShriRudram. The alternative is to do an Ananda Vichara from the last 5 chapters of Panchadashi. So there, Swamiji talks about this particular thing. What he said is, this view of the Karmakandins is not correct. Is not correct. And he gives a very interesting example, very beautiful example. He says that suppose you throw a ball at a wall. As when we were young, we used to do that. You just throw a rubber ball, and hopefully it's just a rubber ball, not a cricket ball, because it will injure the ball. So the rubber ball doesn't injure the ball, but it's fun. So there will be 2 people, and they will throw the ball, and the other person has to catch it. So you have to figure out exactly what angle the ball is being given and how it's going to come back. It's going to go up high or come directly at you, and so on. So in this exercise, the wall is passive. The ball doesn't make any decisions. He doesn't look at, is this a good person or a bad person, or is he regular or what? The karma of throwing the ball itself determines the trajectory of the ball when it comes back. Because the wall, it simply acts as a reflecting surface, right? So this is the view of the karma phala. Swamiji says, look at the example, and the example that he gives, but you can give it other also. Example of a owner of a shop in India. These are all examples from India. It couldn't be anywhere. So consider an owner of a shop in India. And during Diwali time, business is booming. So normally he's got 2 or 3 people helping him in the shop during the year, and they all work normal hours, 8 hours. They're all good people. They're working hard and so on. During Diwali time, there is such a crush of business that you cannot just do it in 8 hours. You have to keep the shop open at night time and open on Saturdays, Sundays, all kinds of things. So he collects his people and says, I want you to really work overtime because I need you. And so that means in some days will be 12 hours. So it's your decision, but I do need you. So there's one person who says, I can't do it because 8 hours is more than enough for me and I'm just going to go home and so on. So he says, okay, I'm disappointed, but it's okay, I understand. Another person says, sir, you know me. Whatever you need, you tell me, and I will work for it. Okay? So both of them have this attitude, different attitudes, and he pays them. This is what is called Nyaya Karika. So if they are at, I don't know what the hourly wages are in India, but let's say it's 100 rupees an hour, I don't know. So he pays them 100 rupees an hour to both of them. The person who works 8 hours, he gives them 800 rupees. The person who works 12 hours, he gives them 1200 rupees. That's it. So on. Then comes the time for giving Diwali bonus or annual increase or something. Who is he going to give it to? He's going to think about a person who went over and beyond and accepted, even though he had some problems at home, told his wife, I'm sorry, I have to work for 12 hours for the next 1 month. And so what that means is that this is not like a wall. See, the wall is Nyaya Karika. Because you throw a ball at it, suddenly it will come back to you. But here, there is a human judgment involved, which looks into how sincere this person is, how out of the way he works, and so on. And so the karma phala is based not just on Nyaya Karika, but on Daya Karika. He says that so the karma kandins are wrong. Karmas don't just. This is the continuation of the same thing that we are doing. Okay, anyway, so we talked about the 2 forms of Rudra already. So this is nice to know that even though I have done some bad things, the karma kandins will say you'll have to suffer. But there is a way to get around it, which is of course the just waking up from all this and turning towards Ishvara and understanding what the Atma is, and then you can circumvent everything. This is an absolute shortcut. Okay? So the next question is, this is what now, up to that we have already talked about. The next question is, who can invoke the Daya Karika? Because in that case, the person who invoked the Daya Karika of the shopkeeper is the one. So it's very interesting. In that case, you submit yourself and said, doesn't matter. You are my employer. You have been so good to me all my life. If you need me for some extra work, of course. It's going to create some problems at home, but I think it's okay. So the submission was the qualifications for his daya, for getting extra bonus and so on, over and beyond what his wages were. In our life, what would that be? Let's now think about that. So here, the Shastra makes it very clear. Shastra says the person who wants to be the recipient of daya, himself or herself must be a dayakari. Daya is given to a recipient who is itself daya for it. You cannot do this where, like this shopkeeper, supposing this is shopkeeper, and he's dharmic, very dharmic. He goes to temples, prays every morning, and Rudram and all of this sort of a thing, chanting, everything, you're very so on and so forth. But then comes somebody says, "Sir, my wife is ill, and I need some time off, and I don't know why she's very ill. I have hospital bills and coming up." He says, "I have a business to run, and I cannot just have people just leave at the last minute and so on and so forth. I'm not going to do this. If you want to just take a time off, then you should just quit your job and do it." You think that Rudra is not looking at that? Is he going to give you the daya? You yourself you are not dayalu. The best thing is to say, "Of course. In fact, you need some help, some money, I'll be happy to give it to you." So the recipient of the daya needs to be a dayalu himself. This is what the Shastra says. Here's a quotation here that Swamiji had given. I'm trying to see. Where is it? I thought I recorded it here on my notes. No, I can't find it. Anyway, if I find it, I will come back to it. So this is a very important topic that we should stay on for a while, okay? Which is my own qualifications for me to invoke the Daya Karika of Rudram rather than Nyaya Karika of Rudram. And I think the essence we've already captured, but let's go into a little bit more commentary on it and so on, okay? So this is, in fact, I think I want to just contain it. We could go on, go quite a few of this thing. But if we expand this is a very interesting point on how Swami Maheshananji has explained this. So a slightly different different way of looking at it. So, there are two things involved. One is the pure consciousness, the Atma, pure consciousness, Chidakasha, as we saw in our meditation. So this is one thing. The other one is the Anatma, which masquerades as Atma. So my body-mind complex, and also aided by the experiences of the Jagat, of the world, borrows my consciousness and pretends as though it's an independent consciousness. So one is false, the other one is true. So the Atma is pure, asanga, We could talk about the asangatvam some other time. Asangaha, absolutely. It's kind of, I think the best way to look at that is that the akasha, space, is asangaha. And it can never be polluted. When there is rain, it doesn't get wet. When there are clouds, it doesn't get affected. It is pure. You cannot kill akasha. You cannot sully akasha. So all of that is also applies to the Atma. So this is what is called Gagana Sadrisham. Tattvamasyadi Laksham Ekam Vid. And so Gagana Sadrisham means that it's a very interesting thing to see. Our real nature is like space. So immediately when we say, our mind blocks it. It says, what? Space? That's nothing. There's nothing in there. You're saying that I came all the way up to Sailorsburg, took a week off of my job, it's gone through this United Airlines and this, that, or the other, all the way, and you're telling me what I am is really just space. I'm spaced out. I can't really handle this. This is one of the blockages that we have of our mind. Our mind also says, do you really believe this guy? Do you know what that really means? That means you have no personality left. At least you have something, you have some kind of a thing. You're not completely wasted. This is how our mind blocks it. But we need to understand the reality of what space really means. And so formlessness, the advantages of formlessness, we have to understand. We don't understand it yet. So whenever we say you're like space, you get spaced out because you look upon it as something as nothingness. It is not nothingness. It is everythingness. This is what we have to see. So this is one of the things. So Swami Maheshananji says, just to keep this argument very short, we can go on. So there are two things involved. One is Atma, which cannot be sullied, like space. And the other one is Maya, which is forever sullied. Anirvachaniya, we've already talked about it in the last couple of days, that this world is never going to be solved. Never going to be solved. And much of our grief when we hear about all these terrible events and so on is based on the fact that if these terrible events did not happen, then I will be okay. What we need to understand that is that it is normal. You'll never be okay if you keep on depending on the world. Never. Not going to happen. This needs to be really understood. This is the real meaning of anirvachaniya. It is going to go on and on. Even if you take birth in next time, you think there's been no problem, there'll be same problems. Same problems. So the Maya Shakti is by nature defective. It is not, this is an interesting thing to see, the defect is not in Maya. Maya itself is defective. So Swamiji makes a very interesting point, Swami Maheshanand. He says, it is like coal, C-O-A-L, coal, which is black. So the blackness of the coal is not because you put blackness on it, it is the nature of blackness nature of coal is blackness. Okay? All right. If that is the case, now we have made these two very clear cases. One which cannot be sullied and the one which is nature by nature is sullied. So the question is, who am I? Am I this or am I that? And And what's my role in this whole thing? Because I appear to be sullied by Maya, and yet you're telling me that I'm the Atma and so on. I don't get it. Where am I? So there the answer is, you are where you want to be. Wherever you choose to be. At this point, because you don't know, you are sullied by the Maya. In fact, you are not sullied by the Maya. All right, very good. I understand. I get it to a certain point. So what do I do? What do I do in order for me to side with the Atma, not with the Anatma? With the pure rather than the impure? What do I need to do? Very simple. You have to change, you have to ensure that your vyavahara is pure. Vyavahara, so this is vyavaharika sat. So vyavahara has to be sat. This goes back to what we were talking about the other one, that if you want to be the recipient of daya, your vyavahara has to be dayalu. And so if you are dayalu, then you will have a chance to understand your true nature, which is that of the Atma. You are relatively dayalu, but to be absolutely dayalu, you need to be relatively dayalu first. Here Swami Meshananji gives so many beautiful examples. He says, we see this in our lives. You have this complete disparity. So that disparity we already saw about this shopkeeper who is a devout. He always goes to the temple and does namaskara and so on and so forth. And then when somebody comes in that my wife is ill, you fold your hands and you say, I cannot really survive doing this. This is the second time you've asked me for it. Just quit your job. You think that going to the temple is going to be any useful around? You think that God is stupid or what? Is He going to give it to you? No way. Absolutely not. Similarly, he says that he cites so many examples of this. He says, I see the, he was talking about this older lady who was complaining about her new daughter-in-law. His new daughter-in-law. And this lady was saying, Swamiji, this is all, personal conversation with Swamiji. Swamiji, I don't know what to do about her. So Swamiji says, why? What's happening? She says, she is such a devoted person too. She's wonderful. She does all the Vishnu Sahasranama. She goes to the temple and so on. But then in the home, she is a prima donna. She would not even make tea for anyone. People have to do things for her. She has absolutely no regard for the elders, and she just does it on her own. She says, I don't understand this disparity. So, this is what is called vyavahara. So, people don't understand. Again, Ishvara is very aware of who you are. And so, if you want to say there is an Atma which is pure and a Maya which is impure, and where do I fit into the picture? It's very simple. that if you want to go towards the Atma, your own vyavahara has to be I have a English translation of the word vyavahara. I was kind of looking it up because vyavahara is a Sanskrit word, and so I actually looked it up, and I went. These days it's interesting. You can go into Sanskrit words and say, "Tell me the synonyms and antonyms in English." You can do that. I never used to do that. I did this for this one. Got a beautiful set of synonyms for vyavahara. You know what it is? Behavior is number one. Conduct is number two. Demeanor is number three. All three are good, but behavior is, I think, the most indicative. How does a person behave? You cannot say, I am a great devotee of Vishnu, and and so on and so forth. You just have to look at the conduct of the person. How does he behave? Does he look like and then that example of this new daughter-in-law is a very good one, I think. And we all can relate to certain people like that, who have kind of like a split personality. So really, in short, you cannot have a split personality. Swami Dayanand used to, I remember these words so well. He says, before you want to really reach Parameshwara and all of that, you need to have a non-split personality. And even if the non-split personality is not as good as you would like, doesn't matter, but at least you should be consistent. And so, in the Bhagavad Gita, on the 13th chapter of the 6th to 11th, those are excellent verses. Amanitvam, adambhitvam, ahimsa, kshantir, arjavam, etc. Just absolutely, I have taught that at least a dozen times, and I am fond of it. Today, Sahadev was the one who was giving me a reference from Swami Chinmananji's lecture on Atma Bodha, and he also cited the same thing. So in this amanitvam, 20 qualities are given and this is also the subject of Swami Dayanandji's book called Value of Values. So Value of Values goes into these. One of the values, an important values, is consistency of behavior. So if you want, in fact this is going to, I don't know how much time I have, but if you want to achieve absolute satyam, you must achieve relative satyam. And the relative satyam means that what you think, what you do, what you talk must be consistent. If you think that, people will know that I really don't very much, then let it be. Because you really don't know very much, let people figure that out. Don't try to pretend that you know a lot when you really don't. So the first step would be consistency. This is what is called vyavaharika sat. We look at paramarthika sat, vyavaharika sat, paramarth, all of that. What is it really? This is what it comes down to. That we need to have a personality which is worthy of daya. And part of that, of course, is the daya itself, as we saw before. So this is an important element to understanding the Tanura Ghora Apakashini. If I want to see that form of Ishvara, and what this would mean, This is the thing. We have a false notion that if I can just pretend some things, I may get to that. Right now it is pretension, but eventually I will get to it. It's not going to happen. You first have to see your baseline, where are you? And not really pretend. And then increase the baseline. That's, of course, if you're not completely qualified for doing it, that means that, ultimately it comes to study and meditation and so on. So if you're not there at that point, this is okay. But then just don't pretend that what you are not. This is the meaning of Vyavaharika Sat. Okay, so this is one of the things. Okay, let's change subjects a little bit now that I think we have covered that part of it. The next topic we're going to talk about as part of the unfolding of this verse before we go to the next verse is the presence of Atma and Parameshwara. Same thing, Parameshwara and so Jivatma, Paramatma, Parameshwara, it's all the same thing. The presence of this Atma, presence of Parameshwara, where is it? How can I be that close to it? What do I need to do? Okay? So here, to illustrate that, there is a story which most of the acharyas have given. So it is somewhere in the Shastra. I'm not sure where it is. Swami Dayananda also gave the same example. Swami Maheshananji also, and you may have heard of that. But let's quickly go through that and draw some lessons from it, some conclusions from it. So the story is that there was a man who was a farmer, and he was doing okay from farming. He had a couple of acres, and this is a farming family. His father was also a farmer, and his father has died. And now he has taken over the farming business, and he has a small family, and he himself is now 55 years old. His daughter is now, ready for marriage, and in fact, the marriage has been fixed. And so, you know how Indian marriages are, they're very expensive. You have to, a lot kinds of stuff has to be done and so on. And he doesn't have the money for that. He has money to maintain, but not to really do a good job on the marriage. So he goes to a friend of his father who is a kind of like a local village banker. And he goes to him, he said, "Sir, my pranams to you. My daughter is getting married, so I need 50,000 rupees or whatever. And I need to borrow it from you." So he says, "Beta, I will be happy to give it to you. I know you very well. But let me ask you a question. Your father had made a lot of money in farming, and I know he converted his money into gold. And he said, this is for my family. He was a wonderful person. He didn't spend all that money. So, where is it?" So he says, "I don't know. He's never told me about this gold." So He says, go to your mom. She would know. So he goes to his mother and said, Mom, this guy was saying that my dad has a lot of gold in it and so on. She said, I really don't know, because I must say that your father was doing very well and he made a lot of money, and I know he talked about converting it to gold, to gold. But I think it's interesting how Indian wives are. They don't get involved with, I can tell you about my own wife. She has no idea how much money we have. She doesn't get involved with any of the accounts. I'm the one that really does that. She has no idea whether we have $10,000 or $100,000 or whatever. Really, I'm honestly telling you this. This is absolutely true. She doesn't care. She has just completely entrusted everything to me. And if something should happen, it'll be, at least I have some records and so on. So this wife said, no, I don't know where it is. I really don't know. So, something has to happen. So he goes back to the uncle, the friend of his father, and said, Sir, my mother also doesn't know. He said, that's very funny. He said, I have an idea. Okay, I'm not sure, but I have an idea. The idea is, he would bury it in your field somewhere, because he has never approached me to put it in the bank, and he was a very good man. I know he's not frittering it away, so he's kept it somewhere. My best guess is that he has put this in some kind of a vessel, and it is inside the farm, somewhere there. So in the meantime, I will be happy to lend you 50,000 rupees. So he borrowed the 50,000 rupees, he did the marriage of the daughter, everything was okay. Then he said, I need to look into whether what my father's friend told me is true or not. Okay? But he didn't know how to do that. So one of the things he did, so follow the steps, all this very interesting steps to one. One of the things he said is, I'm going to work harder to plow the field that I have. Because the more you plow, the more crops it can give, because you can really loosen the soil, all of that, and then you can put fertilizers on it and so on, and the whole crop becomes better. So he really started to tell his people, we want to really dig it at 1 foot, not 6 inches or whatever it is. And so he started to do that. He started to work harder, with the feeling that I think that might be here someplace close by. Lo and behold, as he was plowing, he hit some metallic object. And that turned out to be the little box. And not only there was one box, there were 4 or 5 boxes. And there was so much gold that he could really marry 40 people, not 40 people, whatever it is. He could not believe it. Our situation is very much like that. Very close to it. This is not an ordinary story. If this is from the Shastra, it's not like some Swami came up with some ideas and so on. This is a Shastric story. This is one of those kinds of things, like 10th man example, like the rope snake example. This is also a very important example. I think it is in one of the Upanishads. I would not be surprised if it is from either Chandogya or Brihadaranyaka, because those two are huge Upanishads, and they contain a lot of different stories and so on. So here are the lessons. The lessons are that Ishvara is so close to you like you would not believe. You're all going around, where is Ishvara, and so on and so forth. It's there somewhere. It is there. It's buried somewhere. And in fact, here is a very important verse from the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 18th. I think it's 61. Yeah. At least my memory is not completely gone. It's only partially gone. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddesher junatishthati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra arudhani mayaya. So if you ever have a chance to, on this verse particularly, Swami Vidyaranya, in the, I don't remember the chapter of Panchadashi, he has done such a beautiful analysis of this verse, like unbelievable. And Swami Maheshananji's commentary on that, all this is in Hindi. And so these are 3 volumes. I must have gone through it at least 2 or 3 times of this. I recall this so well. This particular verse is just absolutely marvelous. So he says, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddesher arjuna tichthati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra arudhani mayaya. He says, Arjuna, can I tell you something? You know who is inside of you? Who is making everything that you are work? Your eyes to see, your heart to beat, the blood to flow. So these are the yantrani. Here in the Panchadashi, Swami Vidyaranya gives a imagery of this. He says, you know, like you have this merry-go-round, and the merry-go-round that has these horses, and these horses go up and down, and they're going round and round. And so when your children are like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years old, if they're too young, then you have to stand there next to them and so on. But when they're 5 or 6 years old, then you can let them go, and they're sitting on this horse, and they're enjoying, and they're going up and down, and they're going round and round, and they're saying, wow, this is so much fun. And there is, in fact, someone who is doing it all for them. So here's a machine, here's a person who makes sure that everybody is trapped together, and so on and so forth. This is exactly what is happening in our life. We don't realize it. But really, so this is what is called antaryami. So in the ShriRudram, and I will point out some of the, if we have enough time, I'm now starting to think about if we have enough time. But anyway, we will show you where the sections on antaryami is in the ShriRudram. But this essence of that is, Ishvara is the one who is behind you making everything happen. And if you don't believe this, think about it. When you are awake, you may be able to do things partially by your own. You know, you go outside the room, you go to the bathroom, you go to the kitchen, and so on and so forth. So you have some participation in your own existence. Okay? So there, everything is being done partially by you. But think about the fact when you are asleep. Okay, you are completely asleep. You have no knowledge of your body. You cannot protect it. You are completely asleep. But someone is there protecting you, making sure you have no participation whatsoever, no contribution. Yeah, that's a better word, contribution. At least you are contributing a little bit by eating and this, that, or the other. But when you're fully asleep, and if you're asleep for a long time, 6 hours, 7, 8 hours, or so on and so forth, you're not doing anything, but it is still being preserved for you. In fact, there is a lot happening inside the machine. That food is getting digested. Nutrients are being done. Who is doing all that? Is it happening? It is exactly like the merry-go-round, where people are enjoying and saying, oh, this is so much fun. You don't think about who's doing this for so on. It's exactly what this verse says. So he says, Ishvara sarvabhutanam hritdeshe. Hritdeshe means that in your own heart, Arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra arudhani mayaya. As though it is doing it. In fact, nothing is really happening, but there is a sense that something is happening. So here, this is the analogy of the farming. So to close off that topic, what is being talked about is, you can discover Ishvara's presence if you do the right things. Otherwise, what will happen is, he's there, but you don't know it, and you don't take advantage of that fact. By being just a simple jiva, as a samsari, you are not aware of the gold within you. And to discover, what do I need to do? Okay, fine, I understand all that. Or tell me exactly how am I going to get the gold? By making a commitment and trying with some discipline and with some logic and just holding on to Ishvara and saying, I need to find you. You're there somewhere within me. I don't see you. That has to be done. So just like this. So that's the example of this person, that he started to plow deeper. So without plowing deeper, you're not going to hit this metallic object to say, oh, that's where you are. So I think there was a question, Poonam was asking me this earlier about, what do I need to do? How do I structure? So we'll probably spend some time in the satsang on this. But this is the point, that really speaking, so the whole issue here is that it's a lot closer than you think. You don't have to really accomplish anything in life. You just have to be very skilled in finding. Just like that's the example of the deep plowing. Effort and intelligence and shraddha, all of those have to go into as ingredients into this. And if you do that, Ishvara reveals itself. So this is exactly like this na ayam atma pravachanena labhyaha na bahulta shrutena yameva esha vrinute tasya vivrinute tanugum swam. What a beautiful verse. Beautiful verse. Goes back to the same thing, that it is really your own personal decision with appropriate behavior, with and so on. This appropriate behavior, which is a partial satyam, it's a relative satyam, will be talked about in more detail in the next set of classes. So what is satyam, what is mithya, all of that will be talked about in the next section. So we will do that. So this is this, just to finish this. So this is what is called an adhikari. So whenever you say, I'm just giving you the Sanskrit word for it, when you say, when do I get qualified for daya? So there's a Sanskrit word which says adhikari, adhikara. Adhikara means I am qualified to do so. So this is a good word, adhikari. In fact, if you go to the railway stations in India, so there are rooms, and one of them will be called in Hindi adhikari. Adhikari means officers only. People who have qualified, they have to be railway officers, otherwise you cannot go into that room. So this is what exactly adhikari means. Adhikar means I have the right to do this. And in order to have the right to understand what it is, I must have the right personality, right behavior, vyavahara and so on. Then you become an adhikari. Then it becomes a lot easier. All right, so with that we'll close the class and then we will take up some next topic. And I think we are almost close to finishing this particular mantra, and we'll go to the next mantra, most probably in the next class itself, number 3. Okay? Om asato ma satgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma amritam gamaya. Om purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnameva vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.